Breakfast.
Um, kind of midday lunch
Oh, midday lunch,
or
midday,
midday, mid-morning
mid-morning snack.
breakfast,
Yes,
mid-morning
10:30.
lunch snack or
Yeah.
breakfast.
Yeah. When I was living in the ashram, that was snack time.
Was this in the Bay Area?
Yep. Oakland.
Uh, the ashrams, all the lives
Yeah.
of Catherine Alexander.
Yeah. For years, I raised my kids there. My daughter loves to tell a story.
Oh, one particular story or lots of stories?
Well, just that she was there and, it was a different childhood. So,
How many years were they there,
about three, I think.
and from which ages?
Well, let's see. 72 to 75 or six. And then we lived in a apartment just up the street from the ashram. So we did a lot of ashram stuff still, but we're sort of independent. So I don't know. I have to figure it out in my mind. Yeah. My mind's not doing math this morning. 72 times 69. 79. Yeah, I guess Josh was about eight. So Ben would have been about nine or 10. Yeah, when we moved in there.
Just Honey and Robert not here today.
Well, he hasn't come yet. So I haven't heard that he's not coming. So I'm assuming
Um,
he's coming.
is he often? Because in the last couple of weeks I've been really late, so to see.
No, he's usually right on time. Yeah. Oh, I should probably call Ani and just see what's happening there. I feel like it's late. I picked up flyers and been down to the Apple store and spent $200 so far this morning. So I feel like the day's almost done. And today I'm going down to the Home and Garden Show. I've got three presentations today, tomorrow, and Sunday. Try and get drum up registration for the class. I don't know who this is. It sounds weird. Who's this person? Are you up? Are you awake?
Yeah, just in a new world that doesn't make any sense, and I'm still trying to find what's the purpose of it all.
Well, somebody said, and I think they're really right. If you enjoy life, the meaning is inherent. You don't even have that question.
I know what you mean, but it's like I like feeling purpose.
Yeah, well, and part of that though comes from doing what you enjoy.
Yeah,
Actually, a really big part, I think. I find it hard to do things I don't enjoy. And I've been fortunate in my work life to do things that I love, which is why I can do all this quote unquote volunteering stuff because it's fun. I enjoy it. I don't feel like it's work. It doesn't feel pejorative in any way.
yeah. Um, I'm not sure what I'm what my purpose is, what I'm doing.
You got to
What,
get your book printed. That's what you got to do.
oh, that feels good. That gave me a little, oh, please help me do that. Please help me do that.
Can you give me your sister's phone number?
Yes, I can. Um, I don't know if I can right this minute, but I can see to it
Okay.
that you have my sister Donna's phone number, my older sister.
Okay. Maybe between the two of us, we can corral you.
Well, my heart is longing for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm I'm in a space I've never been in before, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's definitely interesting times. Yesterday,
yeah,
I was on a Zoom call with a friend of mine and 40 other people. He is transitioning tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and he was doing his goodbyes and letting us say our goodbyes on that call. And he was so happy. He was crying. He was so happy and grateful that so many people cared and were there. And it was just really lovely.
it's wonderful.
Mm.
I don't know why I'm having trouble with my voice and not really tapped into my power.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I want more than anything else to be tapped into my power.
Yeah.
But but it's like, okay, where's the plug?
Yeah, you can't see it, but I have my new Soil Smart, Soil Wise shirt on.
I saw that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a gift. They did a card drawing and
Are
I
you talking
got
to
a
me?
shirt
I
and
was
a
just talking in general, but
baseball hat.
I was responding to a headline that the United States has canceled $400 million in grants and contracts to
And,
Columbia University.
12
All right,
beanies,
I'm gonna assume.
Well, that's why
all
I
with
just
my
Okay.
logo stitched on them. So that's kind of fun.
That's darling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
So I'm gonna do a talk at the Home and Garden Show today. And one tomorrow and one on Sunday.
And that's something you want to do.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to get people from there to register for the classes and the webinar that we're doing on rethinking lawns.
May I ask what may I ask what spiritual, not I don't know how to put it, but what higher vibration frequency expanded living feeling. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. And I think that any time that you support life on the planet, you're in that higher vibrational frequency. You're working along with the energy of the planet to bring life, which is what she wants to do and make happen and enjoys and plays with. So,
Yeah, I'd like to have conversation about it.
mm-hmm.
And it would be, in the moment, unfoldment of exchange of our thoughts about who we are and what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's really easy. And I think it's a challenge actually in the Western culture. And Carl can maybe speak to this, but the Asian cultures not so much. We kind of seem to feel that when we're talking about tangible things like rocks and stones and water and soil, that it's pragmatic. It has nothing to do with the spiritual. And the Asians saw spirituality in all of that and waxed poetic and talked about what the wisdom they found in their interchange with these kinds of things. And so I don't see a dichotomy between it, but the split happens in your head. It's not that it's real. It's what you're focused on, whether you're open to that energy when you're working in the garden or working with rocks and stones and soil or not. So yeah,
So exactly what is your point?
the point is that spirit is in everything and that nothing is not spiritual unless your mind is not there. If your mind's not open to the spiritual, then it doesn't matter what you do. You can do rituals and not be, spiritual as such. So it's for me, it's a sense of reverence and appreciation and gratitude that just flows from working with living things and seeing life happen because of things that I've done or am doing. So gardening is a spiritual process, and I think getting people to understand gardening in the larger term, i.e., it really supports the life of the planet through the biotic pump, is a step in that direction. And it's a scientific based step. So people who don't see themselves as spiritual can still take it, even though they wouldn't own that aspect of themselves or the planet, maybe even. I was reading an article this morning about cells, and there's now other people who are saying, my gosh, cells must be alive because they do interesting things. They change their mind about what they're supposed to do, and they will create different uses for their appendages, and they will do different things spontaneously with nobody telling them to. So maybe they're alive, and other people are saying, posh, that's not true. It's just what happens. Has nothing to do with consciousness. They don't have to be alive to do that at all. It's just what happens.
Just inanimate building blocks that make us who we are.
Who change their minds, yes, and actually
Well,
do things on their own. That's the thing. There's been this research, and some people are saying, oh, we've known this for a long time, that the cells under certain conditions will do this. Yeah, well, why? I mean, it's still, they don't get that it's choice, that there is to make a difference is a choice, that something, whatever is making that difference, is doing one thing and then is doing something else. There's been a choice there, a decision to do that, and that's sentience.
so the idea of it's in your mind, but whether you acknowledge it or not. For me, the lesson of exploring the question about Western linear perspective
Yeah.
is that this is a way of thinking, seeing, being in the world that has shaped us at so many levels, but we forget that it's our rules.
Yeah.
And I think that is true with perspective, and it's true with pretty much every assumption that we make, that we forget that it's us. And we have the choice to accept it as true and from God, or that there's sources in history or sort of other beings. And when we accept a system as true and without reflecting on it, then we're trapped by folly and somebody else's assumptions.
I would agree. And that's one of the reasons when in my values work, I looked at the planet to get out of the people stuff, to just see what things that aren't human do. and, and if there's some sort of pattern there that you can discern, if there's some sort of thing that seems to be replicated across non-human life, then perhaps it has a reality beyond just our minds or our own ideas.
A characteristic that comes to me is the eternal nature,
Yeah.
and
There's Robert.
and to feel that, to live that.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me that speaks of the other than human, also more than human world. Good morning, Robert. We're talking about
Hello.
spirituality and how life reflects that or doesn't. I was talking about I'm giving talks at the Home and Garden Show on gardening and stuff to get them into one of our workshops. And Ani said, well, how is that spiritual? So that's what we're talking about.
Is Ani on the?
Yeah, Ani's on the phone. Yeah.
Hello, Ani.
Hello. No voice.
I can hear your voice.
Yeah, she sounds weird, but she's there. Yeah, I think that the strength of the spiritual and acknowledging that and experiencing that for oneself really helps one honor the relationship with mutual respect. Otherwise, we forget the respect part of it and get into manipulating things without feeling like there's a relationship. So for me, that's the real joy and richness of the spiritual approach, is that it keeps you in relationship, which is always more fun. And it keeps you from being alone or feeling alone, or and helps you feel that you're part of, and to Ani's point of meaning, it gives meaning to the work that you do because it is in relationship.
It's auto-poetic.
Yes, it is. It's another t-shirt.
It's self-making.
Yeah.
And so let's do it in a way that feels good.
Yeah. And I think gardening is an act of self-making that people really relate to, even though they don't understand it as such. But when you're in the garden, it just changes how you feel. Your hands in the dirt makes a really big difference, turns people's attitudes and mindsets into a more positive thing. And so even if you don't acknowledge it, you come back refreshed and feel good about being in the garden.
Yeah. I'm gonna check out now.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Bless you. And I so appreciate being connected with you the way we are.
Okay. You take care.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Bye. Oh, it was good to hear her voice, even though it was weird.
Well, it sounds like she has some sort of a cold or flu.
Yeah, I kind of thought maybe she wasn't fully awake, that the phone had woken her up. It kind of sounded like that to me, but yeah.
Keep forgetting it's early. It's early where you are.
Yeah, and I've been to 2 stores and all of that by the time I got here.
Earlier, I guess I should say.
Yeah. But I liked her question because there's that, I have to say, there's a feeling even for me, when I talk about gardening and I talk about earth stuff, it's not up here in the ether, where spirituality is. It comes down in reality. And so you kind of got to constantly remind yourself that. So I like the question very much, that it really is about spirit, and that relationship gives it meaning. That was the other question she asked. Her life doesn't feel meaningful right now. And my retort was that if you're enjoying yourself, meaning becomes irrelevant. You don't really worry about that. So that's another piece of it, to do things that really light your fire. Yeah.
Well, this whole clamor around meaning, finding meaning in one's life, just seems to me it stems out of how much we're, just our society prepares us for regret and doubt.
Oh.
You know,
Hmm.
and I don't think society planned on doing that, but the way we're brought up, parents, we got to experience some of their, regrets
Yeah.
in our growing up, and socially, the same thing. It's sort of a, a free for all rush, to be the best that you can. But the implication has always been in my mind that we're expected to not succeed.
Or fall
Because
short in some way. Yeah.
what does succeed mean?
Yeah.
I mean, does it mean making $1 billion? Okay, well, very, very few people on this planet will do that. Or is it, to find one's whole meaning in life to be a servant of God, or however they want to phrase it. And very few ever reach that, in its entirety. So there's nothing but doubt left, or, feelings of regret. And I mean, I'm not feeling it that much anymore, but because I'm definitely working toward not the $1 billion, but the other one. But I've been looking at these things, and have been feeling this for weeks now, that I've, just every message, well, every consumerist message is saying, you don't have it all.
Yeah.
We
There's
have something
more.
you need. There's always more.
Yeah.
And I don't think the richest man in the world, Musk, is all that happy either. So, so takes that avenue out of this drive that I'm.
Yeah, I think of whales and turtles. And, a turtle floats around in the ocean for 150 years,
Yeah.
a long time. And what is he doing? He's floating around in the ocean, enjoying it, curious, watching things, seeing things. That's all he does.
Well, he goes
And
after.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He eats and procreates occasionally. Yeah. But it gives me a perspective that there is, when you look at animals and they seem to enjoy life, they seem to love the life they're in. Um, and it's just enjoying life. That's all they're doing.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. So it's kind of a lesson that maybe we can do the same thing. Or at least it needs to be a key piece of what we're doing.
So why did you mention whales?
Because it's the same thing. They just float around and they do sing to each other. Okay. So maybe the song is shows more agency in a way than not doing anything because they are creating something that they share amongst themselves. But they still live a good long time, and it's just floating around in the sea. So they're
According to more poetic, nature writers, speaking of whales, it's said that they create sagas.
yeah, yeah,
To create sagas about where they've been and what they've seen and what's been handed down to them.
yeah. They keep their history alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't know that for sure, I guess, but
Did you say that's writers or great writers or?
no, I'm saying that some of the articles I've been reading about whales in the past, of the past year, because there've been a number, if they mention the song, the singing, they often imply that or state it seriously, as one of the points that they are probably communicating with each other what's going on. We can't prove that yet. We don't have a language for them. But people are getting close. That's what
Yeah.
I read, that they're closer and closer. And, there's, if the equivalent of nouns, have been found, that they're talking about specific things, it seems. So I've been fascinated by that, Carl.
They they might be more Asian talking verbs and not nouns.
That's what I was thinking when you said nouns. Yeah, it would be interesting.
That's
Yeah.
just as an alternative view.
Hadn't thought of that. That's probably true.
The also, Chris, you guys know me by now. I think about lots of things through the or this is a cultural norm through the lens of perspective. It's an example of how we use, the how much language we have about seeing. But one of the very first books that I found by sort of an amazing circumstance, written by an attorney who considered himself a hobby historian, pointed out that one of the downsides of our perspective and our visually oriented science is that we've missed all of our other senses, hearing and this may be similar to some of the work that the work about it's connected to the work about thinking about whale songs. So within this idea of we've missed our other senses, I have read that some researchers are instead of putting a camera in the forest, they put recording instruments or
Yeah.
microphones,
Yeah.
and they're picking up sounds. So maybe the idea that maybe we're starting to well, I think we're just starting to even consider the possibility that the sounds mean something, because we're starting to consider our other senses. And I think when I think about that question, so there's so much of what we believe about whales is what we photographed, seen, and these other senses, hearing and smell and taste, we're really just catching up.
Yeah, Sophie Strand has a beautiful blog on that. She talked about birdsong. And what was so incredible about it for me was the research that's gone into birdsong has determined that the birds fit their songs into the spaces where other birds are not, so that they all fit, they don't compete, they don't overlap, and they adjust their song to be heard within the canopy of other birdsong. And that as we have invaded their territory and create noise of our own, which is not respectful in any way, it isn't in a relationship at all. It just blocks stuff. It makes it harder and harder for those birds to find a space. And so they're actually not mating because they can't do their mating calls. They can't be heard in the noise that we make.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was such a beautiful expression of how, in my mind, our cells work also, that it's not competing or going over, it's trying to fit and finding the spaces where they can work together in that way so that they're not competing or fighting. They're figuring out how to blend in some sort of way, how to connect. And that's a skill that we are really, really poor at on every level. On every level. We don't really get that integration piece. We see it as competition or winning, doing something over, eliminating that competition instead of working with it, around it, and within those constraints, accepting that the other is there and then figuring out how you fit. I think women do that more than men because we kind of have to. In dialogue and in power issues, women kind of have to fit themselves into the spaces that are available because they're really not allowed at place often. So we've kind of developed that technique of doing that. Um, and it's something that bothers men because they just don't understand the subtlety of it. Um, I think men have agreements around rank and recognizing who the other is and that they're ceded certain things, but there's not a blending. There, it's a different kind of relationship.
Yeah, relationships of dominance are not blended.
Yeah.
They may act as in a collective way that can be
Yeah.
very efficient and productive, but they're not blended.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except that one gives in to the other, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Capitulation.
Subordinates.
Yeah. 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 But the birdsong article is just so lovely, bringing forth that characteristic in nature that we don't see so often, but they were able to actually document with birdsong.
Well, some research that I've been astounded by is mapping the terrain of the brain.
Mm.
I've worked not only on humans, but, you know, on many of the different animals and even, you know, the more insubstantial animals, smaller ones. And what they're finding, particularly by using, I think, MRIs, is that in every creature, there are certain areas of the body and certain senses that become prioritized. For the sense of touch, for instance, for us, there's certain areas like our fingertips and many of the erogenous zones, you know, there's a high degree of development in the brain for those terrains. And, you know, for cats, they've done cats and rabbits, and, you know, they show the same pattern that they are dogs, for instance, with sense of smell. I mean, certain things are highly developed in certain places. And then within that sense space, you know, other areas like, say, the middle of my back, you know, gets almost no sensory input, or
Right.
very little, so that you can feel a mosquito landing on it, but that's about the only thing that comes through. That was very fascinating to me, that the brain has developed in certain ways to guide what will be of importance to the creature, to us. And the eyes are very highly developed, Carl. And it's just one spot, you see. I mean, that's maybe why they can be so dominant. It's just one spot. Whereas sense of smell, for instance, or because evidently the body can smell, pick up scents, off, in other parts of the body, but it's minimal, totally minimal.
The minimum in the awareness of the smell.
Yeah.
Um,
And then touch is exactly the same. It covers the entire body, but it's really concentrated in just a few places.
I wonder how that correlates with memory in the brain.
I
Because
think it does.
because they've been able to see that very small brains can have incredible memories. A chickadee, for instance, has a very tiny brain and can place food in over 1,000 different places and remembers where they are and can go back and get that food, much like a squirrel.
Well, I'm reading this book called El Dorado. It's written by a journalist in the 1850s. And he used to write a lot of, he traveled a lot, particularly considering the, 1850. And this particular book brought something very interesting to me, which was that he said, well, he wanted to find his horse. He said it wouldn't make, and this was a book about the gold rush area. He was in California, out in the mountains and the gullies and ravines, meeting these, what are they called anyway, the gold rush guys. And he said, well, I can't ask them. They would never know what a horse, where a horse went. They wouldn't notice. But he said what are they, vaqueros? The Mexican natives from the area. He said they would know. And sure enough, he starts asking around, and oh yeah, there's this gray mare, yeah, over at Smith's place or whatever it was, and sure enough, and that's totally involved with sensual relationship
Yeah.
in my
And
mind.
perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it has ordered their entire way of viewing things.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I mean, to me, they're very smart in that way, whereas the rest of we white folk very stupid. I mean, you can use those words.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't, of course. We use euphemisms. We're just not inclined that way.
Give her little egos a pat there.
But I mean, what I'm saying is this is all programmed within the brain and how it works. And that's beginning to be revealed by some of these studies. It's quite amazing.
But the programming isn't one way, it's a two-way thing.
It can change.
Yeah. I mean, it's in relationship to experience and to repetition that sort of seems to signal
Right.
important
Right.
in that kind of thing. So, yeah, so it's malleable and controllable in a sense.
I just used the power of the Googles to verify something about smell, and I just a quick half a brain to look at that while I was listening to you talk. I think that I think there's evidence that smell can trigger more memories, a lot more memories than seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Like a lot more,
Yeah.
like thousands and thousands of times,
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Certainly important to dogs. I mean, and I can see when dogs smell that they are getting pictures because they will often smell and then they'll look around to see if that smell isn't there. So I would guess that they're getting pictures in their mind from that smell.
Yeah, well, I think a lesson that I've learned from having a dog now is realizing that when she's smelling, if it's whatever it is, some animal that passed there 2 hours ago or 12 hours ago, for her it's now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because that smell is so much more real than what we think it to be. Well, that's a different way of thinking about it when I watched our dog as a kid smell.
It's an interesting idea that, we do base most of our memory in sight, or I do. I mean, I think.
Well, I think this.
Sound too, music will do the same thing. It will bring back whole
Well,
sorts of
that's
memories.
the thing. Music and smells bring back this wave of emotional attachment or connection to what it was, whereas the sight immediately goes to the working, the frontal lobes, the working brain.
I think culturally, it's it goes to the part that we accept as provable or factual, or
It's not an experience like smell and sound are. They're experiences.
I I think that, like, the idea that it's not experiences. Again, I'm wondering, is this another example of from our visually dominated world that that's another, to say that is another it's us distinguishing between one sense and the other. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, I was thinking of sunsets when you said that, and sunsets can be an emotional experience. There's an emotional connection to them, a sense of awe or beauty, which is for me an emotion.
It's
not an experience in the same way that sound.
Well, I'm kind of wondering if because of not just our visual sense, but the way we categorize visual sense, is it almost limits us to appreciate that sunset or something at a deeper emotional level.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and also because, again, looking through the lens of so much art, I mean, the power of the Impressionists were to say, wait a second, there's so much more meaning in nature. You just go out and paint nature directly, and let's consider how this nature makes us feel, this emotional quality, and not just this Greek Greek um, um, historic stories that so much art was based on. Allegories is word. So I mean, I think very much of Western art before the Impressionists, there was very little emotion, because that's what they were rebelling against. But it was, the way I think about it, the aristocrats would go to the museum and see paintings of Greek gods and Christians, and it was all based on what they learned in grade school, and it justified their knowledge, validated their existence, but it didn't expand their emotional response to nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the phrase expand their emotional response. How does that happen in something you see?
Well, that's like the oldest paintings that we know of from those caves in France. I think where it's saying, seems to vary at times, but they're 20 to 30,000 years old. And they may not be absolute replicas visually, but they're so rich, the colors, they're very impactful.
And there's an emotionality to them too. There's a vibrant
emotionality to them.
Well, I think this is the power of abstraction, or the lack of exactness, is that opens it up for the larger emotional response. I think that, and this is I think the part of Asian art. It's that it's the I mean, sorry for making trying to like good cop bad cop thing, but the typical description of Chinese perspective is that it lacks the precision, the exactness. But that idea misses the point, which is, there's a power in the subtlety of how it's presented that allows you to expand for yourself what the meaning is, which is exactly what Picasso was trying to do with Cubism, just as a note.
Yeah, I think that was the whole Cubist thing, is to sort of show all perspectives at once and that kind of thing.
Well, but
I go back to the painting you showed me, and I don't remember who it was. It was painting fog.
mhm.
That vagueness was its richness.
I think it was a Japanese print with Mount Fuji. I think that's probably the one I was, because there's a street scene in the foreground.
There's not much. No, and I think it was a European, actually. Who was
Turner.
way out. Yeah.
Oh,
Could-
Turner, probably, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, Turner. Yeah, who was outside of his time. I mean, to go vague in art at that time would have been, what do you mean? How could, it's nothing, there's nothing there. Because it was
One
the
of my favorite,
they were working for. Yeah.
one of my favorite Turners, there's this sea battle going on in the foreground. This tiny little sea battle. And then the canvas is this big. All the rest of it is this tempestuous, amazing sky. It's just like saying, yeah, you and your historic battles. I mean, what's really going on is this. I loved it.
That's that is indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Here is, I want to share. Go ahead and keep talking, but I want to.
What's coming up in my mind is the value of lack of precision and how it brings in other dimensions just because of its fuzziness.
I see value in the lack of precision.
Mhm.
This is to quote my artist person Elzitsky. He said, abstraction has the power to create aims.
Yeah, and I've always had trouble with abstraction, actually. And for me, it's different. One of my favorite watercolor artists is Lily Gervin, who recently died. And she does what are usually landscapes. But man, you have to get way far away to actually see that it's a landscape. Because when you're close, it's all just swaths of color and feeling. It's not really anything at all. And then when you step back, you can begin to see the haziness of the landscape that's actually there. And that's different for me from abstraction, where I don't see any connection. I mean, there's no, it doesn't land for me in any particular place. Now, sometimes colors, maybe shapes, but it just, I cannot find the relationship in it. And without that relationship, it just doesn't speak to me. And even some, I'm thinking of Alaskan art and the stylized, and a lot of African art is the same way, very stylized. It's just hard for me to find the connection, the relationship.
How about Kandinsky?
I do like Kandinsky, but there's an emotion there that I can relate to, and movement and stuff. So it's not the shapes, it's not the recognize, there's just something about it that I do find connection in. And some of the indigenous art, I just don't feel a connection. It's just hard for me to care about it. I mean, it's like I've seen it once and it's done. It doesn't bring up other things. It's just it seems very flat to me.
There's a possible question, there are times when you look at something, whatever, you see the landscape that's obvious what it is, that you also don't relate to it either. And so maybe the operation isn't that you're not responding to something that's abstract. You don't, there's some paintings you don't respond to, and you might categorize
Yeah,
abstract.
so what that brings up for me is there was an exhibit at the Mac, which I went to the other day, and women painters. And one of the paintings was very similar to Lily Griffin's. It was water. You could kind of figure that out, but I had no relationship to it particularly. It just didn't grab me in any kind of way. Even recognizing what it was and seeing what she was trying to do with it, um, it just didn't have the soul that I feel in Gervin's work.
Can you put the name of that artist you mentioned, Gervin? Can you?
Yeah.
And I posted a Turner painting in the
In
in
the
the
chat.
in the chat, which is my computer screen. So I think I would call it my favorite,
Ah, yes.
certainly my favorite Turner. But when I
So,
saw this thing, I saw this at an exhibit at the Getty years ago, and because before seeing this, I thought Turner's paintings were all those black clouds or smoke, dark clouds.
well,
Um, the colors in this it's actually great to see, even on the small scale, see it without all my little apps and stuff.
When did Turner live? How
Middle of
long?
the 1800s, 1850s, probably is his peak.
So definitely
A little,
some of the imperial impressionists were very aware of his paintings, perhaps.
yeah, I think so. That's actually something that I should Google is how much the direct influence.
Well, a lot of Monet's garden scenes are like this,
Yeah.
usually at a smaller scale, than this is very large landscape, but
yeah, I'm looking for Gervin's work. She just recently died, so there's lots of obits, but not much uh, actual art here. Oh, here's a couple.
So this I just Googled Turner's influence on Monet.
yeah.
Oh, those are
And it's pretty well documented. So it says just the William Turner's influence on Claude Monet in many ways, including his use of atmospheric effects, light, and river subjects.
Right.
Monet's work was inspired by Turner's paintings, which he saw in the National Gallery in London.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Um,
Well, Carl and Catherine, I've got to be somewhere at 1:30 at 2:30.
Oh, okay.
so you have 3 hours.
And 4 minutes.
Don't you wish? No, yeah. This has been actually a very light and wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that today. Okay.
All right.
See
We
you
will
next Friday.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ah.
It has been literally light.
Yes.
This Turner painting, it's so stunning.
So talk to me about it. What do you see that's so stunning about it?
Well, first of all, that it was it's not the foggy gray dark of the paintings that I knew about him.
Ah, okay.
Um, but just the colors, it's just beautiful. I probably the the
You know the name of it?
I'm sorry.
What's it called?
Um, hang on a second. I think it's one of his last paintings, but let me Google search it.
Yeah, The Castle and the Wolf.
Is it, do you find?
No, I didn't, but that would be a good title for me. Yeah, I mean, I think of
Well, Norman Castle Sunrise is the name.
okay, Norman Castle. Yeah, interesting.
Um, there's another painting. Um, I don't know if this is the same turn. Joseph Mallard, William Turner. What is that? Is that a paint?
Yeah, it is lovely. Yeah, and Lily Gervins, it's to look at her stuff and then to look at what she called it. I mean, they have absolutely no relationship. So color washed in light is this one on the left, and my mother's fan is here.
Oh, you're still
Can you see it?
yeah now.
Yeah.
Um, um, I'm kind of wondering. When she was doing this, you could say that color washed in light or something. What was it? What was the call?
One is color washed in light. That's the one on the left. And the one on the right is my mother's fan. So, and for me, they're both landscapes.
Yeah, that's Picasso would say, "Have at it."
Yeah.
Um, have I shared this? There's a document which is really an interview of Picasso from the 30s that I find really important to me.
Mhm.
If you haven't sent it to you, I will. But it's I mean, he sort of says you know, don't look at my paintings to try to figure out what I was doing. Have your own.
Experience. Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that's what
Although he certainly wouldn't allow his wives to do that.
well, we all have our limitations.
Do that.
But he also said, no, I'm not defending him.
Yeah.
But he also said, you can't paint a painting of a woman by measuring her arm first.
Yeah.
Um,
No, he was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was just bitter because people didn't see his brilliance, didn't really understand it. And so
wow, that's
dismissed, he dismissed everybody else as not being very smart because they didn't get where he was. Yeah.
boy, I think John, but boy, that's an example of somebody who, regardless of what success they have, they're still going to be bitter and still not enough.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he got really nasty about it and very dismissive of his own talent, even. You can't tell what's a real Picasso. So my signature is good enough. You don't need anything. I mean, I wanted to slap him.
well, my sense is that like the signature thing is um um I think the way I heard this is that Like he couldn't send a check to anybody because immediately
they would,
he put a signature on it. It was worth, and that's.
yeah,
I mean, that's not so much on him; it's on the crazy art world.
yeah. Well, and that's why he was mad. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That they were demeaning his art by just making him a signature. Yeah, I mean,
I
I
think.
I get where he was coming from. And I don't even argue with it, you know. But to make that justify being less than yourself, I'm sorry, it's just poor. And
Yeah,
that's what I think he did. So that's why I want to slap him because, yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, so what? You don't have to be caught in that. It doesn't have to matter to you.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anything, it should just tickle the daylights out of you. It's hilarious.
The
Hilarious,
my
stupid.
it's part of my view of modern art history is from Clement Greenberg, who was a really important art critic, who announced in the mid-50s that modern art is now um, a style, and we can stop experimenting. we, we we know what it is, so let's stop experimenting. And which I mean that statement I think um demonstrates kind of what we're talking about with like how the art world missed the importance of Picasso. It's this idea we now know what it is. We can stop playing around. And this anyway.
Hubris.
So I think the this idea that it's now a style, we can stop experimenting. Even though he was this famous art critic, boy, I think he just really missed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The joy is the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely to see you.
Time to
I
go.
got
Nice
your
to see you.
email, and
Okay.
I'll make some notes. I got an email from Brian. I don't think he copied you,
Yeah,
but
he did. Actually, I haven't looked at it, but I saw it.
um he seems to be pretty serious about this, doing something in Australia.
Nice.
Maybe we can move to Australia because of all
That would be
because
interesting. That would be interesting. Yeah, I feel like something is up. I just don't know what exactly, how that's going to manifest. So we'll see.
yeah. Okay. Have a good day.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.